What's the scariest thing you can imagine? Is it that feeling that you're being watched, or the slow, chilling realization that your own home, your sanctuary, isn't safe anymore? For one family, the horror started when a stalker hijacked their phones, watching their every move and listening to their most private conversations. For another, it was a series of letters from a mysterious watcher who claimed to be the guardian of their new house and wanted to see young blood in the hallways. And for dozens of women, the scariest thing was coming face to face with a man who had built a soundproof torture chamber on wheels. These are three true, scary stories that feel so unreal, you'll wish they were fiction.
Let's go back to 2007 in the quiet town of Fircrest, Washington. For the Kuyen-Kendall family, life was totally normal, right up until 16-year-old Courtney's cell phone started acting up. It began with random, nonsensical texts being sent to her friends. At first, you'd chalk it up to a weird glitch or maybe a prank, but the strange texts were just the beginning. Soon, the entire family and even some of their neighbors started getting phone calls at all hours of the day and night. These weren't just prank calls, they were terrifying. A distorted, scratchy voice on the other end would make specific and brutal threats. They nicknamed the caller Restricted after the caller ID, and it threatened to kill family members, their grandparents, and even their pets. The real terror, though, came from what the stalker knew. The caller would describe, in real time, what the family was wearing or doing inside their own homes. In one of the most chilling examples, a neighbor, Andrea McKay, was cutting limes in her kitchen when she got a call from that same scratchy voice. It said, "I prefer lemons." This wasn't just some random person making threats. This was someone who was actively watching them. The families were living in a constant state of fear. They called the police, but the investigation only made things weirder. When the authorities tried to trace the calls, they discovered something that seemed impossible. The calls were somehow originating from the victims' own phones, even phones that were supposedly turned off. The family's phones would turn on by themselves, and ringtones would change without explanation. At one point, while an officer was at their house, all of the family's phones turned on at the same time and started calling each other. The stalker's technological reach seemed to have no limits. After the Kuyen-Kendalls installed a brand new home security system, they immediately got a voicemail saying, "I know the security code." Maybe the most disturbing part was after a private meeting with a police detective, they came home to a voicemail that contained a complete audio recording of the conversation they had just had. The police were, in their words, dumbfounded. They and the FBI investigated the case, even looking at Courtney as a possible suspect, but they could never find an explanation. The families changed their numbers and bought new phones, but the calls and the feeling of being watched continued relentlessly for 4 long months. Then, just as suddenly as it all began, it stopped. The calls ended, the texts stopped, and the constant paranoia faded. No one was ever arrested, and the Fircrest phone stalker is still a complete mystery. In June 2014, Derek and Maria Brodus bought their dream home, a beautiful 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard in the wealthy town of Westfield, New Jersey. Having grown up nearby, Maria was excited to move her 3 young kids into a home just a few blocks from where she grew up. They paid over $1.3 million and started renovations, ready for their new life. They would never move in. Just 3 days after closing on the house, Derek was doing some painting and went to check the mail. Inside was a thick white envelope addressed in clunky handwriting to the new owner. The typed letter inside started off friendly enough. "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." But the tone quickly turned sinister. The writer claimed their family had been watching the house for decades. "My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time," the letter read. The writer knew things about the house and the family. like the make of their minivan and the fact they had 3 children, who the letter creepily referred to as young blood. It ended with a chilling sign-off. "You know I will be watching. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin." The Watcher. Terrified, the family called the police and the previous owners, the Woods family. The Woods admitted they'd also received a weird letter from the Watcher right before they moved, but had just thrown it away thinking nothing of it. 2 weeks later, a second letter came. This time it addressed Derek and Maria by a misspelled version of their last name and named their 3 children in the correct birth order. The Watcher was getting more possessive and more threatening. "All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house," it said. It asked which bedrooms the kids would be in, adding, "If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream." The letter then demanded to know if they would bring the young blood he had requested. A third letter arrived weeks later, asking, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." By then, the Brodus family was paralyzed with fear. They had already sold their old home and were now living with Maria's parents, all while paying the mortgage and taxes on a house they were too terrified to even set foot in. Multiple investigations were launched by local police, private investigators, and even former FBI agents. Neighbors were questioned, especially the Langford family who had lived next door since the 60s, but nothing ever linked them to the letters. DNA found on one of the envelopes suggested the sender might be a woman, but it was never matched to anyone. The Brodus family never spent a single night in their dream home. After years of trying to get rid of it, they finally sold the house in 2019 at a huge financial loss. Reportedly, the new owners haven't received any letters. The identity of the Watcher, the person who turned a family's dream into an absolute nightmare, remains unknown. We're about to get to our final and, honestly, most disturbing story. But before we do, if you're finding these strange, dark, and mysterious stories as fascinating as I do, hitting that like button and subscribing really helps support the channel. It lets me know you want more content just like this. All right, now brace yourself for the Toy Box Killer. Out in the New Mexico desert, a man named David Parker Ray lived what looked like an ordinary life as a maintenance worker. But he was hiding a secret so monstrous, it's still considered one of the most depraved cases in criminal history. Ray wasn't just a killer. He was a meticulous torturer who, for decades, abducted women and subjected them to unimaginable horrors inside a soundproofed semi-trailer he called his toy box. Ray's reign of terror finally came to light on March 22, 1999, all because one woman refused to be another one of his forgotten victims. Cynthia Vigil, who was 22 at the time, was abducted and taken to the toy box. For 3 days, she was chained and tortured, but when Ray's girlfriend and accomplice, Cindy Hendy, left the keys to her handcuffs nearby, Vigil saw her chance. She managed to get unchained, overpower Hendy, and escape the trailer, running naked into the desert with a metal collar still padlocked around her neck. She found help at a nearby home, and the police were called. When investigators got to Ray's property, they walked into a real-life chamber of horrors. The trailer, which Ray had spent an estimated $100,000 customizing, was filled with whips, chains, surgical tools, and restraints. At the center of it all was a gynecological chair with a mirror mounted on the ceiling above it, forcing victims to watch what was happening to them. But the most chilling discovery was an audio tape. Whenever a new victim would regain consciousness after being drugged and chained up, Ray would play this pre-recorded message for them. A calm male voice would begin, "Hello there, bitch. Are you comfortable right now? I doubt it." The tape went on to explain in graphic detail the torture she was about to endure. It said she was now a slave who would be sexually assaulted by Ray, his accomplices, and even his dog before having her memory erased with drugs and being released. The tape was a psychological weapon designed to completely destroy his victim's will to live. Cynthia Vigil's brave escape blew the lid off of decades of kidnappings, torture, and suspected murders. With Ray in custody, another survivor, Kelly Garrett, came forward.
Investigators believe Ray may have tortured and killed as many as 60 women over several decades, though because no bodies have ever been definitively linked to him, he was never tried for their murders. In 2001, David Parker Ray was convicted of kidnapping and torture and sentenced to 224 years in prison. Just over a year into his sentence, on May 28, 2002, he died from a heart attack in his cell, taking the true scope of his evil and the fates of his many suspected victims to the grave with him. From a stalker who could turn your own phone against you, to an anonymous writer who made a dream home a prison of fear, to a sadist who built a personal hell on wheels, these stories prove that the most terrifying monsters are the real ones. They walk among us, hide in plain sight, and can shatter that sense of safety we all take for granted. These cases leave you with some really unsettling questions. The Firecrest Stalker and the Westfield Watcher were never caught, which means they could still be out there, and we'll probably never know just how many people the Toy Box Killer victimized. It makes you wonder, which is scarier, the evil you can identify, or the one that remains a ghost, a chilling mystery that can never be solved? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you're brave enough for more strange, dark, and mysterious stories, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.